It's all about making sure that you're giving people the best product, because anybody can sell something once. You combine really good people on your team with a really good product, it makes staying top of mind a lot easier, because then word of mouth is going to be a lot easier too. So
we are back with another fantastic human that I am so excited and ready to introduce you to. This dude is taking the world by storm. He seems to be on the front page of almost every practical entrepreneurial venture thing that's going on right now. This guy, whether it's a presence on social media as a person or with his product, he is just established himself as a force, and I'm so pleased to welcome to the show today the co-founder of Slate, the protein chocolate milk drink that is just so delectable and delicious. Please welcome to the show my friend, Mr. Josh Belinsky. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you also saying that you've seen me individually in social media. It's something my co-founder Manny does a much better job of, and he's pushing me to do more of. So the fact that my small individual page is getting out in the world, hopefully is a good thing.
I think that the presence that you have is underrated, honestly, because where you're at professionally with LinkedIn, you've definitely got more of a presence relative to the other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's really about the value that you bring to each platform. And that's really what I'm focused on, you know, because you seem to be doing that within the consumer goods industry. And we'll get into that a bit. I want to start by asking you, man, what mission are you on?
That's a really good question. When I looked into you when we first, before we first met, I remember looking at a lot of your other shows and different hype reels, and a lot of it was people saying, that's a really good question, because you do ask really good questions, different than most other podcasters.
Thanks,
and interviewers, which is awesome. So mission-wise, honestly, my co-founder and I we love entrepreneurship. We love making change in the world. We love building things from scratch and improving people's lives. It's kind of cliche, but us personally, it started with, we loved chocolate milk and just couldn't really drink it anymore because it was too high in sugar. It wasn't lactose free, and we were lactose intolerant. There's all these issues with it, and we just selfishly wanted to drink chocolate milk every single day. That honestly is the selfish mission that we started with. And now as we've grown and beyond Slate, just like our mission in life is, we say stronger people, stronger planet. And that is like the core mission of not only Slate, but us as human beings, is we want to help people be physically strong, mentally strong. We want them to be strong in their relationships and everything. And then also at the same time, taking care of the earth that, we all take a part of, and that comes through in our business and our everyday lives as well. So that's kind of the core mission, I would say.
And the slogan is giving chocolate milk a clean slate, which is so profound, because at the same time, there's also this nostalgic element of chocolate milk for adults. Yep. What makes those two sentiments align?
So when we first started the brand, it was, we want chocolate milk every day. That's all we want. But as an adult, you're not supposed to be drinking chocolate milk. It's a kid's drink. It's branded for kids. It's high in sugar. Makes your stomach hurt from the lactose. It spoils quickly. And so we wanted to take all of those, what people normally think about chocolate milk when they think of chocolate milk, everything they think of, we wanted to wipe the slate clean. So that's why we called it Slate. Of, this is something brand new. When you think of chocolate milk, we want you to think of Slate. Something that's high protein, low sugar, tastes delicious, lactose free. You can drink it at any age, no matter what you look like or what you do. And that was kind of that transformation of a clean slate. And as the brand has developed, we've kind of moved away a little bit from the chocolate milk's clean slate. I think the word slate has a bunch of definitions. And for us, it's giving yourself a clean slate every day is what's on the daily slate. Like, I think there's a lot of ways you can use that word of, a slate a day. It's on your daily slate. It's much more about routine than it is like necessarily getting rid of the old. But I also think that it's having a new view on life and being able to take something that maybe was negative and make it positive. I think that all kind of factors into the words of Slate itself. And now, as we've developed into this platform that really focuses on protein to fuel your body, the word slate and then the word strength is really another big adjective that we're really trying to move into the platform, because people drink our products because they want more protein in their diets. It's not, I need to go lift 400 pounds at the gym and let me bulk up. It's, I need protein to operate my daily life. More and more people are incorporating protein in their diets, whether they're male, female, non-binary, if they're old, if they're young, if they're whatever it is. A lot of people are just trying to incorporate it more because it keeps you satiated for longer, and it fuels you. And so that's a big piece of, we want to make protein more accessible to people.
What I love about the way you go about discussing the product is that there's this element of focus on the value that you bring to the consumer, and you recognize like the problem, and you're talking about how you wanted to solve it, you and your co-founder Manny, where you wanted to have chocolate milk every single day. I mean, like, it's a dream, right? And I think we actually both have a friend in common, Eric Hinman.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric talks about this concept of chasing perfect days. He's also been on the show. And so it kind of fits that sentiment where you're building something in. And I'll just quickly touch on my morning routine as of Slate, where that was a little too cliche. But but what I'm doing is, after I train, I'm having an athletic greens, and then I take my Slate and I get out the door for my 1 hour commute. And honestly, it has saved me so much time because I don't have to wash the shaker. I don't have to worry about whether I'm harming the environment. I don't have to worry about, like, doing anything other than getting into my fridge, opening it up, grabbing the drink, and getting out the door, and still meeting my nutrition goals, because everyone in my community and audience knows how hard I train. So Slate helps me get closer to my goals. And the other thing is, I won't endorse a product unless I've tried it and like want to actually speak to the individual. And we've had Jake Carls on. I don't know if you know Jake, but I'm happy. Oh, awesome. Good. So you two should definitely know each other.
Yeah.
And Mark Samuel. So like, there's just some great entrepreneurs in the space that have been on the show, like yourself. And, one of the things that we talk about is what it takes to build the business. And, you guys started with a Kickstarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And I'd love to just get, in your own words, the trajectory of where it started to how you've gotten to where you are now.
Yeah. So the very fast forwarded timeline, and Manny always makes fun of me also for making long stories longer, but to try to give you the spark notes, when we first started, Kickstarter sometimes has a bad rap. A lot of entrepreneurs say, oh, if you can't fundraise, you do a Kickstarter. If you can't make a product or whatever, you do Kickstarter. But Kickstarter was honestly, I used it at a business prior, and for Slate, it gave us our first 1,200 super loyal fans. It's people that are pre-ordering your product before you've ever produced it. You already have that built-in consumer base. And from that Kickstarter campaign and video, we had so much traction on it that we ended up getting reached out to by Whole Foods and the casting team from Shark Tank. So two great things that kind of came out of that. And so without breaking the 55-page NDA that we're on, we ended up filming on the show before we really had a market-ready product. That formula never made it to the shelf, and we will still stand by that it was a delicious formula. We just had some unfortunate things happen when we were out there. And they just absolutely roasted us on national TV. But that episode airs like every 60 days. It's unbelievable. And but it's great because it gets our product in front of 1 to 5 million people, depending on the day. And, we were really able to take that and use it as a launching point for what's to come. And my mom's so funny. Every time it comes on, she's like, you got to reach back out to them and make sure they know how good you guys are doing. And I'm like, I don't know if they really care, but maybe I'll do one of those episodes. So anyway, that was in beginning of 2019 was the Kickstarter. We launched in the fall of 2019 into Whole Foods, a couple of other retailers, and online. And we were very lucky because we set up our e-commerce business before the new year. And we had some great early backers kind of rolled from Kickstarter. And obviously when COVID hit, that took away our entire retail strategy. So most people can probably assume beverages sell a lot more in stores than they do online. It's something heavy to ship, and consumers are just used to kind of grabbing and going. And so we thought we were going to be very heavily retail. But when COVID hit, it was really hard to get product delivered to the stores. And so we had to pivot and really focus on our e-commerce channel. Now, we were lucky because you had hundreds of businesses scrambling to set up an e-commerce supply chain when COVID hit, because they were so focused on retail, they just didn't have an online presence. So I give a lot of credit to Manny and his older brother, who was just working part-time for us to help us out on the side of getting a website up and running, having the full supply chain built, and then we were kind of ready. Now, I won't say anybody was truly ready for that, but we at least could still hit our goals by being just more focused on the e-commerce channel. So fast forward a few years from now, Slate is now sold nationally through our own website and through Amazon, Walmart.com, you name it, we're most likely on there. We're in about 12,000 retail locations, everything from Walmart to Albertsons Safeway to Whole Foods to Wegmans, Harris Teeter, Publix, a lot of the kind of the folks that are out there. The team has grown to over 40 people full time, headquartered out here in Boston, and Manny just made the move to have a dual headquarter in New York City. So now we have a home base in New York City as well. And yeah, it's been an incredible ride. We have awesome team. And yeah, I guess most recently the biggest news that came about was we just became an official sponsor of the UFC. So as we've talked about, Slate is really trying to be associated with strength and protein. And right now, when you think of sports and fitness, typically you associate, especially professional sports, with hydration, Gatorade, Powerade, Body Armor, Prime, what have you. And there's such an important macronutrient that we feel like doesn't get associated with sports that often, especially from a brand perspective, and that's protein. And we feel like there's nobody really winning that protein world. And so why not partner up with the fastest growing professional sports league in the world, with the UFC, and really be the kind of protein drink that's there for the fighters, that's there for the staff. And we've already seen some awesome traction from that. So it's been kind of a cool, kind of full story.
It's an immense journey.
Yeah.
Just congratulations, I gotta say firsthand, man. Like, now that I got you on the mic and I get the chance to tell you face to face, like, it's really one of the coolest things, because I became acutely aware of the brand probably about a year ago through influencers, and to see like the trajectory that it's taken, it's probably, from your perspective, you're like, I built this thing, you know, like, that's crazy.
No, it's still, I tell this story all the time to people that ask me of how easy was it to start. And I'm like, well, first of all, to be an entrepreneur and start your own business, you have to have people that are supporting you, whether it's financially, emotionally, like, it's all about the people around you helping you get through it. But also, like, I still live in Boston and my parents are half an hour from here. I knew that if I was dead broke, that mom and dad would take me back in and I'd have somewhere to stay at the end of the day. And not everybody can say that. And like, that's a huge privilege. And I realize that. So I always, first of all, put that out there. But the other story I tell is my parents are the most supportive human beings in the world. They would do anything for me. When I was first looking to start this, I was in the world of real estate tech. And I told my dad about chocolate milk. He was like, let me ask you a question. How many wealthy people do you know in real estate? And I was like, a lot. He's like, how many wealthy people do you know in tech? I was like, a lot. He's like, how many wealthy people do you know in milk? And I was like, see, Dad, that's where you're missing it. That's the opportunity, because a ton of people are going after the pot of gold of real estate and tech. There's this big pot of gold out there in the world of chocolate milk that nobody's going after. And that's the opportunity. So I bring that up very often, because as you said, it's like, I don't think anybody thought Slate could be what it is. And over time, it's just evolved, and we wouldn't be anywhere if I never found Manny. I mean, Manny has been literally through all the highs and the lows. Not having a really good co-founder, there's no way I would still be doing this. Like, it's so crucial to have people that you can lean on throughout. Like I said, whether it's external or internal. And for me, we got really lucky that, you know, him and I just work super, super well together. And I think that's part of our superpower of why Slate has been able to grow so quickly, is because him and I are kind of on the same wavelength all the time.
And that's like part of what's so immense about it, the fact that you're so transparent about the relationship and even the growth that's taken place. I mean, there's another element that I want to touch on there. You know, we talked about the trajectory of how it's just hockey sticked, right? There's a lot of, how do I say this, well-known athletes that have also invested in the brand. Professional athletes across multiple sports. If we're talking in the NBA, we're talking Terrence Mann, Duncan Robinson. If we're talking Olympic athletes, we're talking Josh Dixon, Lauren Gibbs. You pick the right influencers along the way. There's a lot of brand alignment. The UFC, obviously, and we'll dig a bit deeper into that. How do you manage your mindset? You just mentally speaking, like, do you ever feel the pressure? And if so, how do you go about it?
I think that for Manny and myself, having each other is really helpful, as I mentioned before, not to harp on that too much, but knowing that it's not just me at the end of the line. It's we have our entire team in front of us, but also it's Manny and I in it together. And in the last 4 or 5 years, since sitting in his living room, not taking a salary for the first couple of years, trying to get this thing to work, it took us over 2 years to convince somebody to actually produce our first product. And the entire time of that 2 years, it was banging our heads against the wall. And so, with everything over the last few years of how many times shit's hit the fan, our teeth's gotten kicked in, things have not gone right. I mean, countless stories of things that you're like, there's no way that's real. And I think that the fact that we've gotten through it's this level of, I was joking with, I'm engaged. I was joking with Manny about, like, I would much rather have 10 slates in my life than have to go figure out how to date again. Like, approaching a girl in a bar sounds way scarier than negotiating a contract with a professional athlete. And it's something that over time, because we've dealt with, I feel like, so much, that's the fun part. And getting all these people involved in our brand is so much fun, and having the team behind us. And yeah, there are definitely times like during fundraising over the last, 3-4 years, and money getting low in the bank account at certain points. But I don't know if it's naive or what, but we just have this undying belief that we're always going to be okay. And I think that sometimes it freaks out the more conservative folks around us of, like, something needs to happen in the next couple of days in order for everything to be okay. But we always do. We always find a way. And so that's kind of the fun of it. I love the pressure of it. And, for us working with partners that you just mentioned, professional athletes, et cetera, it's really all about brand alignment. Like, if we have a professional athlete that doesn't like the taste of the product, we're never going to work with them. If we have somebody that's going to call us every 5 minutes, where's my money, where's my return, we're not going to work with them. But if somebody who loves the product and wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves, they're a perfect fit for the Slate team.
The underrated aspect of what you're talking about now, what I'm hearing kind of come through, is this mindset of inevitability. Sure, it's this aspect of, like, yeah, everything's going to work out. But you're also doing the things that make it work out. You're banging your head against the wall, making sure that no matter what it takes, someone's going to eventually make this product on your behalf, and continuing to iterate until you find that solution that makes everything work out in the end.
That's a good way to put it. That is a great way to put it. I think that's true. Whether it's naive or not, that's what we believe.
And that's a big part of why I wanted you on the show, because I love that you and your co-founder bring that mindset of inevitability to the table. You're showing people, especially in this day and age where, let's be real, for our generation, like, it's hard. Like, we have all these platforms and opportunities, sure, but, like, there's a lot of voices from every which angle, like, coming at us, trying to grab and snag our attention. It's how do you value that attention? So in that same vein, how is Slate, in your experience, with you at the helm, with your co-founder, how are you guys going about capturing and keeping attention, and also building community?
I think a ton of that goes to our first employee, Anna Carr, aka AC. She came on with no experience, graduated with her nutrition degree, and came in and started in customer service, was out there demoing in the field with us when we were in the first stores, took over some of the influencer kind of relationships and basically dealing with DMs and DMing people all day. And just over the last 3-4 years has grown to run all of our national partnerships for all of Slate, all of our highest level of influencers, the UFC relationship and everything. And I think the community for us and making sure we're in front of mind for people is all about being a good person yourself first and just working with people. We say people by people, not products. And not having somebody like Anna on the team, Slate doesn't work, because people want to work with Anna no matter, like, it doesn't matter how good the drink is. If Anna stinks, they're not going to want to work with Slate. So it's really been authentically having good people on our side and creating the best possible product we could. And it's relentlessly pursuing that flavor. I mean, it's got to be close to 1,000 iterations of Slate at this point, of even just an individual flavor. and we're still making tweaks. And it's all about making sure that you're giving people the best product, because anybody can sell something once. And if you have something people really enjoy and they want to tell their friends about, you combine really good people on your team with a really good product. It makes staying top of mind a lot easier, because then word of mouth is going to be a lot easier too. So Anna and her whole team, I mean, there's too many people to actually name, but they do a really good job of making sure that there's product in the right places. They're in gyms, they're in health stores. Our sales team makes sure that we're front of mind, getting great placements in grocery stores across the country, getting cooler placements, making displays, just making sure that Slate is in as many places as possible. And then really coming over the top now of how do we get some of these larger deals where people are being hit over the head with it, with the UFC and things that, put us in the right context in people's minds. And it usually is health, it's fitness, it's protein, it's better for you. You're not going to see Slate necessarily associated with, something that's not in that vein, right? So I think that that's a really key piece.
When it comes to crafting the vision, we talked about the mission a bit, and we talked about the trajectory, the narrative, the partnerships, the brand alignment. But when it comes to crafting a vision, how did all this kind of come to fruition, if that makes sense?
Still crafting it. Maybe people are a lot smarter than me, but I feel like people are lying if they say they had the vision from the beginning. I mean, Facebook started off as like a dating app, right? Like it was totally different. I mean, there's so many stories of companies that started off as something completely different that ended up in a different direction. And I think that it's, for us, what we thought was going to be a better for you chocolate milk company, and literally just taking on the world of dairy and Nesquik and Hood and those guys, has become a platform where we sell high protein food and drinks, where we are selling actually very often against a lot of coffee products and protein products. And our focus is on making people feel strong, and making people feel strong is a very different kind of connotation to the nostalgic kind of high sugar lifestyle of original chocolate milk. So I think that it's still being crafted. But along the way, what was always we've stayed core to is that we're never going to sacrifice a very approachable brand. We're never going to sacrifice the integrity of the product, and we're never going to sacrifice us being good people and only working with good people. And it's very easy to say. Sometimes it's very hard to do, especially when you have partners that can be very good for your business in the short term. It's having that long-term sight of like, this is not going to be something good for the long term. You want people around you, because it's too hard. Starting a business and growing a business, and we're not even there. We're not even close to being done yet, and saying that like, oh, we've made it. We have a long way to go. And it's already so hard anyway if everybody's rooting for you, but you have people rooting against you or that aren't the right partners, it's going to make it too hard. So I feel like I completely dodged your question, but I would say that it's being crafted every day, and that Manny and I are really just kind of observing what's going on in the market, what's going on with our team, how people are talking about Slate, and it's kind of being formed in front of us for us.
It goes back to that transparent element that I was talking about before, where it's okay not to have that perfect vision crafted for what you ultimately want for yourself, because ultimately you're still plotting it as you go with intention and imperfect action, with this undertone of like awesome work ethic, and obviously meeting the market where it's at, understanding those trends, identifying the gaps in the market. And that leads me into my next question, where it's like, if there was, and I know it's not easy, if there's maybe, if you can't put your finger on one, but maybe 1, 2, or 3 examples of underrated lessons, you could go back, you could redo 1 or 2 things that would allow you to skip 6 months, a year, and say someone's kind of on that same trajectory. They're building their business. They're trying to put a particular consumer good on the shelf, or they're trying to service an audience or a community. What would you advise them?
I'm thinking for those who aren't watching. So, I mean, so many things. I mean, to go back to really good people around you, if you don't have a co-founder, I highly, highly suggest having a really badass co-founder that you really trust. Way easier said than done. And if you do have a co-founder and you're already not getting along and it's early on, break it off as soon as you can, because as things get bigger and as money becomes bigger, people become more greedy and more selfish. And I've just seen it happen way too many times between partners where it doesn't end up working out. So your co-founder is your spouse. That is somebody you should be prepared to share everything with. All your financials, your family, your history, everything is open. And so if you are going to do that, just make sure it's the right person. But having somebody that you can really lean on, I think, is super, super important. You can totally be successful as a solo founder, but I think that's a big one that I would highly suggest, because then you get two people working on problems instead of one most times. I think that's one. Another thing is I feel like we've gotten better at this over time, but sometimes it's very easy to have decision paralysis, especially when you feel like there is a lot of pressure on you. You've raised a bunch of money, or somebody, you're spending your first $100,000 on a big marketing campaign and blah, 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 or whatever. In this world, it's very hard to, actually know if you made the right decision or not, because every time you make a decision, it's how you react to it. And so what we always say to people is, or as Manny likes to say, from football, is one cut and go. So when you're a running back, it's you make one cut and then that's the line you're on, and you just go for it. And so for us, similarly, it's like you think through, you make sure you get all of the opinions, you get everything in the room in order to make a good decision. Once you have those opinions, once you make that decision, you are freaking going with that decision. And it's all about how you react to that. And shit's going to go wrong all the time, but making sure that you're just not getting stuck is so key. Make sure you're moving the business forward a little bit every day. And for us, we literally drew 16 squares on Manny's whiteboard and had every section of the business on it. So when we were just banging our heads against the wall before we ever launched, and it was like product R&D, legal, accounting, fundraising, like each aspect of our business, and what would be next for us to move the business forward a little bit. And we made sure every day that we were pushing through with those things. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, find your own method, but just pushing the business forward and making sure you're constantly making decisions. It took us 2 years to launch the business. Could have took us 20 if we didn't necessarily do that. And that also kind of rolls into the third thought, was a lot of companies have boards. The board's job is to be advisors and for you to be able to call them at any time when you have a question. Highly recommend trying to find your own personal board of advisors. And whether that's in your everyday life or you reach out to somebody random on LinkedIn that you think would be cool, those people are people that Manny and I lean on for everything. Like I met a guy when I was volunteering maybe 7 years ago, and we were next to each other serving food, and we started talking. Turns out he used to be high up at Kraft Heinz, but like the most ethically sound person I've ever met. And so I don't even call him about CPG things. Whenever there's an ethical dilemma going on in the world of Slate or my personal life, I call him and be like, what would you do? And so like, he's my ethics guy, or my dad. And then I have, we have people that are specific to retail. We have people specific to e-com, relationship, whatever. So you have your own personal board of advisors. It could be for your career, but also it could be for your personal life. And you start to figure out who that is. And those people end up being not only your rocks throughout the process, but you also might end up finding some people that want to be involved in your business. Doug Boughton, who's one of the co-founders of Halo Top, I randomly DM'd him on LinkedIn saying, hey, we're doing for chocolate milk what you did for ice cream. Would love to pick your brain at some point. Genuinely just wanted to get to know the guy. And he responds, holy shit, no way. My business partner's sitting across from me right now drinking a Slate. Dumb luck. I mean, my dad always says the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? But I guess we had gotten the brand out there enough for his partner to want to try it. Doug's now a very close friend. He's a part of the brand. He helps us, Peter from RX Bar, Amanda and Drew from Yasa. Like, so many founders want to help other founders that, really just don't be afraid to reach out to people and try to build your own little personal board of advisors. People are busy. Don't call them every day, but you'll find the people that you really kind of vibe with.
All phenomenal pieces of advice. I'll kind of try to take them in reverse because you threw a lot at the audience. I know they're going to have to go back and listen to it over again because there's so much value in what you're putting down here. The last part that you talk about, this mental board of advisors, or an actual board of advisors, there's this concept also of a mental board of advisors. And I believe Napoleon Hill talks about it in Think and Grow Rich, where there's these different mental models that people can have in the back of their heads, where say like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, or just naming former U.S. presidents in this particular example. But, say that you wanted some wisdom or insight into how that person would think, you could picture them in front of you and get an idea of how they would handle that particular situation. What you're outlining here is this framework about how you can accelerate your decision making by having people that you could trust, but also having a framework of identifying visually what are the different compartments and departments of your venture, and you can visually see each piece moving forward, understanding the amount of effort and action that will be necessary in order to propel to the next step. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a question I'm dying to ask you. I don't even know how I'm going to ask it. It's just going to kind of like flow out. The UFC, man. We alluded to it a couple times here. People are familiar with the story. If not, definitely go check out some of the content that Josh and Manny are putting out there, Slate, or the UFC itself, Dana White himself. What is it like having this opportunity to be at the forefront of, as you said, the fastest growing sport in the world right now? And I think that's the question, man. Like, what's it like? And what are you doing about it?
Wild. Absolutely wild. I'll tell you, growing up, when I was younger, UFC wasn't really a thing. Like it started before Dana and the Zuffa, before the brothers bought it. And they, when they bought it for like $2 million in like early 2000s. They sold it a few years ago for like, I'm going to screw this up, $4.5 billion, something absurd. What I love about Dana is that he is one of the most successful entrepreneurs, and he just wants to win. And he doesn't care how much money he has. He just wants to win in everything that he does. A lot of people, when they sell their business for that amount years ago, would be done. He still runs the UFC. He's still the president of the UFC, which I freaking love. And so, growing up, because it really wasn't a thing, I was never like really that into it. My family, we were not necessarily super into combat sports. We loved watching old videos of Muhammad Ali, but like wasn't really into it. And then as we got older, and my fiance, actually, her father is a 9th degree black belt in karate. So that's when I really started, when we first met 7 years ago. It's when I first really started getting into that world. And her brother would always have UFC on. And I didn't really understand it. And the more you watch, the more you understand that it's not two people just killing each other in a ring. There's a total art and science of the sport, and these guys that dedicate their lives to being the best of the best, which is the UFC. And so when we thought about, for Slate, how do we become, we work with professional athletes and across a bunch of different sports leagues, as you've talked about. And what we love is we are the insurgent. We are the brand that is smaller than all the big guys, but we are the brand that's growing really fast. We want to bring protein to the masses. We want to be accessible to everybody. And we felt like that story really aligned with the UFC story of a professional sports league basically starting less than 30 years ago and now being one of the most popular sports in the world. We felt like that aligned really well. And it also really focuses in on physical fitness. I mean, it's just two humans in there, right? And it's however they've trained in order to get there, which again, we thought really aligned well with Slate. And all of that paired with Dana was very unhealthy. So Dana White, for those of you who don't know, president of the UFC, comes out and says, I'm very unhealthy. A doctor tells him he's going to die. He needs to change his lifestyle. And part of his lifestyle change was he ended up trying Slate from a friend of his. And he starts drinking it every day. And later on, when he reaches out to us saying, this stuff's incredible, I need to be a part of this, it's one of those emails or calls that you just don't get very often, and very, very cool. And the thing that also is very cool about Dana is when you think about a lot of celebrities that are out there, you have a lot of pre-existing kind of assumptions about them. But when you're in the room with Dana, his phone is not in front of him. He is dialed in on you. He's asking questions. He's totally concentrated. He's not like he's itching to get somewhere else. And so, as we mentioned before, no matter who they are, they have to be the right people. After meeting Dana, we're like, this is the right person for Slate. And when you meet the UFC organization, could not be a greater group of individuals that they just want to see brands win. And they have great success stories of like Manscaped and these other sponsors that started off as these tiny companies that are now premier sponsors of the UFC. And so being brought into that family for us was a no-brainer. And so when we, took a very long time to figure out exactly what that deal would look like. But when we've announced being an official partner of UFC a couple months ago, the entire brand has really just had this upper echelon of lift since then, in retail, online. I mean, with our post-purchase survey on our website, which, not too high of a percentage of people fill out, but the people that did fill out, almost half of the people in the last 60 days said they heard about Slate from the UFC.
Wow.
So it's just amazing. And what's cool about that is, like, that's all new customers, right? That means that those are people that never knew about Slate beforehand. So we're really starting to see the power of aligning ourselves with organizations like that. And, way down the road, hopefully at some point, we're like that with every professional sports league, where Slate is that go-to kind of protein for everybody. But being a part of this brand has been very, very cool, because they're still kind of like the little brother. They're not the NBA, they're not the NFL in the eyes of most Americans. But they get more social media engagement and audience than really every other major sport combined behind the NBA, is what we've been told. So they're kind of that rising star, and being with them, we think, is a really great place to be.
I'm nodding my head about the community aspect because I could totally see it just by virtue of the engagement that they have, like you were talking about. I have no idea how true it is, obviously, but I imagine that's extremely valid, just because I've been to UFC match myself, and it's definitely much different in person than it is on the screen. On the screen, it's still wild, but I would say that, like, the violence, it's different. You're like looking away, but you keep looking at the same time. But it's also, you get a feel for the individual that attends these events and their interest, and understand, and it helps you also grasp your core customer and understanding what they stand for and what they want and how you could solve their problems. And you've touched on a few different things that I think, when it comes, whether it's building or growing or adding value, what I really value about what you've, in all the lessons that you've shared here today and all the wisdom that you've offered, the transparency, is that there's this unapologetic element of, I'm going to do this no matter what. And I may not necessarily have that all figured out, but I'm actually counting on that. That's where my adaptability shapes how the path forward is going to look. Because if it's not there, I make it there. And whether that's with, the UFC, or whether it's with an influencer, or whether it's just me and my co-founder banging our heads against the wall, even if everyone left tomorrow, you know what it takes. And having that under your belt, I feel like, is what's giving you all this confidence and blind determination. You call it naivete. I got a few other words for you can use. That I have a immense amount of confidence, a full amount of confidence, that you and Manny are going to continue to grow and see this thing through. I got another last question for you here, man.
Sure.
It's something I pose to all my guests. I'm working on phrasing it a bit better, so let's see if I got it. Assuming that the ideal version of you 10 years from now is in your ideal spot, what do you think you would say to you in order to get there?
Another great one. In order to get there, I think it's to continue to focus on work and life balance, and making sure I'm taking care of myself and the people around me just as much as I'm taking care of the business. I think it's really easy as an entrepreneur to get totally sucked into everything, and to think you have to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Not to say that Slate isn't on my mind that often, because unfortunately, as my fiance knows, it is. But at the same time, it's, us putting down our phones for at least an hour to make sure we have dinner together and are actually, talking and communicating, and not just kind of living next to each other. It's on a Friday afternoon before a long weekend, if we had tons of meetings that week, being okay with leaving at 3:00 and going and playing 9 holes with my dad before the weekend, knowing that on Saturday I'll probably be doing something with Manny. Like, it's just really making sure that, as one of our original investors always says, you get hit by a bus tomorrow. And the way he uses it is, if somebody offers you a favor, take it, because they get hit by a bus tomorrow. But I also think of it as, like, life's short, and if you're not enjoying everything about it, then you just don't know. And so for me, it's making sure that I am really I think that for the next 10 years to continue to be just as successful, it's not only to have Slate be a success, but it's all of my personal relationships, my personal health. Like you said, training every morning, like making sure I stick to my diet and exercise routine, because that'll make it a total win. The money at the end of the day is great, and hopefully it's something that we're able to have in 10 years. But I've never had a lot of money, and I'm pretty happy. So I think that as long as I'm doing what I love, then nothing else really matters, and with the people that I love.
Thank you so much for today, man. Please let the audience know where they can keep up with your journey.
At Slate Milk on Instagram is the best place to do it. You can also follow me, Josh Belinsky, on Instagram. You'll see content of my fiance, my cats, and a little bit of Slate. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn too, just Josh Belinsky. So super easy.
Loved having you on today, man. This was so much fun. I can't wait to come out there to Boston, and we'll either get a lift in, a chill session, whatever it is, or when you're in Manhattan, you let me know.
Yeah.
Make it happen, man.
Definitely.